in this last 3 weeks. Amon-Ra St. Brown matching Calvin Johnson and Herman Moore for the most touchdowns by a Lions receiver through the first 4 games of a season, with 6 already. In studio to assess this one, Joe Musso alongside Lige Duzable. I'm looking at the numbers for the Lions here because it's an impressive defense for Cleveland.
Correct.
We've seen that week time and again. 277 total, 4.9 per play. You get a touchdown in the third phase, but still 34-10 coming off of what by their standards isn't the most explosive game. What do you make of it?
Moose, the score isn't indicative of how this game went. You talked about it. The third phase, special teams gets a punt return. Also on defense, you get a score. Let's not forget the DJ Reed interception. He gets tackled at like the 4-yard line that sets up a touchdown for Amon-Ra St. Brown. So a great defensive performance by the Lions. Now, you talked about this Browns defense isn't talked about enough because the offense struggles so mightily. But that Browns defense got after it. I know there were some headlines with John Morton, the offensive coordinator, saying, well, Myles Garrett hasn't seen our run game. And besides Jahmyr Gibbs, the Cleveland Browns showed up, and they mitigated the run. I believe they gave up just over 100 yards rushing, and it was less than 4 yards a carry. So they did what they needed to do on defense. You can't turn the ball over at that clip and expect to win games.
We're looking at Jared Goff, who was completing 73% of his passes coming into this game, finishes of 16 of 27 for 168, 2 touchdowns. You know, that offense is going to want to be more explosive, more efficient. But I'm looking at the Browns right now and trying to figure out what's your why. You look at the defense, and it offers you hope that you can flip some tables, move some chairs, as you like to say, and make some noise. But should the intention of this team right now to be find out what you have at quarterback? Is it time to see one of the rookies?
It's time, and I thought they should have started off playing some of the younger guys, right? You have 2 rookies, one you drafted in the 3rd, one you drafted in the 5th. It's time. Joe Flacco came out in my class in 08. And Moose, we were both looking at the TV when he threw that interception on a throwaway and saying, what are you guys can do? This Browns defense has kept them in games. Even the blowout loss to the Baltimore Ravens, that wasn't indicative of how that game went either. The Browns defense showed up. So you were saying, Moose, if you're a Browns fan, you're leaning on saying, we have a championship-type defense or a really good defense. Mm-hmm. Why not see what these young guys have? Because we're going to be in a position with 2 first-round picks to potentially go get our guy next year if we don't have that current guy in the locker room. But the only way we can find that out, Moose, is if the young guys play.
Let's flesh it out one further. Do we go full JV split squad? Do we let both get reps? Do you have a name in mind you want to see first?
I think you have to roll Dylan Gabriel out there first just because that's how it was in preseason. He was the backup quarterback. He was efficient throughout preseason. Yes, I believe he only played in the 1 preseason game, but he looked really good in his time going out there with the offense. So I roll him out. But I'm like you. I'm JV it. Give them half and half, right? If we have 14 games left or 13 games left, give them 6 and 7 games apiece, right? Now, again, if one quarterback goes out there and plays really well, you stay with the hot hand. But if he goes out there and struggles like most rookies do, why don't you see what the other rookie has as well? Because, again, with the draft capital you have, if you feel like you don't have the guy of the future in your locker room, you have that ammunition, go get your guy next year.
We saw it this week in New York. Yep. Let's find out. We'll see if it is time for those rookies in Cleveland as the Lions win 3 straight and improve to 3-1. All right, a look at the offensive excellence of the Detroit Lions. 137 points through 4 games, and that was after a slow start against the Green Bay Packers. It is the 2nd most through 4 games in franchise history.
People and the energy, man, that fine could have been a whole lot more. I did hear, though, Squirrel White is doing okay. I was very nervous for him in the back of the end zone, but seems to be all right. Switching over to the team that Florida State beat week 1, Alabama, a massive victory for them, of course, when it comes to the SEC championship race. But, Brad, how much goodwill did they buy themselves in the eyes of the College Football Playoff Committee?
Well, it was a must-win opportunity, and Kalen DeBoer, hats off to the Crimson Tide, especially Ty Simpson, just magnificent on 3rd down. I think Bama converted 8 of their first 8. He looked great. Heisman frontrunner, in my opinion. But moving forward, Alabama as a team, there are still 5 games on this schedule against top 20 competition. At Mizzou's not going to be easy. Coming up against Vanderbilt, knowing what happened last year, Vandy's undefeated. LSU probably going to be banged up a few weeks from now, but they got to play them too. Oklahoma, Alabama has a loaded slate. So I think the schedule is good enough where if Bama finishes 9 or 10 wins, they're going to be in the playoff. But this was a barometer-type game in the SEC. And I think right now, heading into mid-season week 6, Ole Miss and Alabama are the 2 front runners in the SEC, and Georgia's kind of playing from behind at this point.
Yeah, certainly looks that way after this Saturday, a big win for Ole Miss over LSU. Damian, I know you want to talk about your Alabama Crimson Tide, but I do have to ask about Georgia because it feels weird, but I'm going to ask, what's wrong with Georgia's defense?
Well, I've said it once, I'll say it again. Georgia has always been a team that knows when they rush 3 guys, they're going to get pressure. When they rush 4 guys, they're going to get pressure. I mean, sometimes they rush 5, but they always get pressure up front. And that a lot of times has alleviated the back end, the secondary, from really having to do their jobs, although they play it very well. But they don't have to do as much because the pressure is always on the quarterback. Quarterbacks are always trying to get the ball out quick. Well, that's not the problem. We saw that with Tennessee. Joey Aguilar, he had all day long to dissect the defense. Same thing with Ty Simpson. And when your defense doesn't live up to the standard of what Georgia expects, it puts more tension on the offense. It puts more pressure on Mike Bobo, puts more pressure on Gunnar Stockton. And while there's still a competitive offense, that's a lot of pressure going from knowing that you have a defense that's going to get you the ball back, put you in favorable situations, get you in favorable field position. You don't have that anymore. That makes you play a little bit more tight. So I think their defense is actually impacting their offense and the overall success of their team because they're just not getting the same pressure that we're used to seeing Georgia's defense get.
All right, I mentioned that Ole Miss LSU game. Ole Miss, of course, now a top 10 team in the eyes of the AP Top 25 poll. You look at the schedule, things are shaping up nicely for them to walk right into the college football playoff, although we said that last year and we saw what happened last year, so this thing is far from over yet. But Brad, is this a top 10 team when you watch Ole Miss play?
This is a top 5 team, and they are my new SEC frontrunner. And I don't ever speak highly of Lane Kiffin because I know he has coaching gaffes against unranked teams. But look at the schedule. Ole Miss only has Georgia and Oklahoma left as ranked opponents. Might have had a better roster last year, but this year's team as a whole, I think, is better and likely Lane Kiffin's best in Oxford.
Yeah, I think everything that Brad just said was absolutely correct. This is a top 5 team. When you look at what they found in Trinidad Chambliss, where the offense is going, the way he's able to use his legs, that's Lane Kiffin's dream right there. Like, he is licking his chops every time he gets to call a play for Trinidad Chambliss. But most importantly, let's talk about the defense. They held Garrett Nussmeier to under 200 yards. They picked him off. They forced turnovers, and they tackled very, very well. That is the sign of a good football team. And I'm even surprised to say that because Lane Kiffin is an offensive guy, but he's got his defense. The past 2 years now, the defense has just gotten better and better, whether it's in terms of pass rush, linebacker play, secondary. They play a style of togetherness defense that it's just hard. I mean, Garrett Nussmeier coming into the season, he might have been the number 1 quarterback off the board before the season started. They held him to under 200 yards. They made it difficult for him. And again, not understating what they're doing on offense with Trinidad Chambliss, this is just the best Ole Miss team that I think Lane Kiffin has had. And we know with the offensive mind Lane Kiffin is, if he's got a good defense, he's got a good quarterback, he can very well take this team to heights that they haven't been recently.
I'm glad that you sung the praises of this Ole Miss defense because I'm going to play devil's advocate here.
Okay.
A lot of defenses have looked good against this LSU offense. It is a massive surprise that they are not having as much success as we thought they were. And I know that Brian Kelly doesn't want to talk about this offense, but we have microphones and we can talk about it. So, Damian, what is going on the offensive side of the ball for the Tigers?
Everything. Nothing is going right for this team offensively. Garrett Nussmeier doesn't look like what I'm not even going to say what we expected Garrett Nussmeier to look like, but what Garrett Nussmeier expected himself to look like, what Brian Kelly expected himself to look like. When you've got a quarterback, and, you know, we talk about this in NFL terms, right? That is the fate of your franchise. The fact that they cannot protect Garrett Nussmeier is a huge problem. And then on top of that, we've seen drops from receivers. We've seen inconsistent play at the receiver position. And you almost get in a position where you look at Garrett Nussmeier and say, what do you want him to do? Let's not forget to mention the fact they don't run the football. I mean, I know Caden Durham has been banged up, but LSU is one of those teams that seems determined to not run the football because they want to attack you through the air. And when none of those things are working, you have no offense. You know, when you have a good run game, a competent run game, when all else fails, you can just turn around and hand the ball off and hope to get 2 or 3 positive yards and stay ahead of the down and distance. But with that, this LSU offense it's scrambling right now, to say the least.
Yeah.
You know things are bad at LSU when Brian Kelly calls out his star quarterback. We thought this guy was number 1 in 2026 NFL draft board. And with that knee injury he suffered during fall camp, he just can't move out there. Right tackle's a big issue right now. There's been some bad guard play. 4 new offensive line starters for LSU, and we are seeing it now entering week 6. They cannot protect Garrett Nussmeier. And as Damian mentioned, there is no run game to speak of. Caden Durham was banged up yesterday. They didn't get anything from him. And on 3rd and 3, 3rd and 4, they do not have a power back they can go to and get first downs. We mentioned Ole Miss. Lane Kiffin's offense yesterday pounded LSU at the line of scrimmage, and they did well rushing the passer against Garrett Nussmeier, making him frustrated, down and distance situations. So LSU, they've had this Achilles heel for 4 or 5 weeks now. It just finally showed up in a loss in a big way.
Are we going to talk about this LSU defense?
Do you want to?
I'm sorry. I'm not trying to steer the conversation. So if you wanted to go somewhere else, Emily.
No, I mean Brad mentioned it too. Just not getting a lot of pressure.
All right, thank you. Hold on. Let me pull up my stats right here. You know, I posted it to Twitter, but I just want to make sure clear his throat. LSU's defense last night gave up 500 yards of total offense, 170 in the run game. Ole Miss had 29 first downs, were 2 of 2 on 4th down, and they ran 28. And I will emphasize 28 more offensive plays than LSU. Now, going into this game, we talked about the offense is a little shaky, but there were a lot of people that seemed to think that this LSU defense was going to be the thing that got them to the college football playoffs, hopefully a national championship. Where were they? Where were they? Where was Whit Weeks? Where was the secondary? I mean, Ole Miss had their way, running the ball, throwing the football. I mean, even to be able to convert on 4th and 3 to seal the game. And I mean, there was just nobody covering the receiver. It was almost like they had no presence of mind to even expect something like that. Is that coaching? Is that playing? I don't know. But again, I don't want to just throw all the hay in on the offense and not talk about the defense is not showing up and they are not playing good against good competition.
Well, the big reason that we had a high expectations for this defense, Brad, is because of all the work they did in the offseason. They brought in tons of pieces on both sides of the ball. So how much of the blame is it fair to place on Brian Kelly?
I think all the blame goes to Brian Kelly. He's one of the highest paid coaches in college football. He's top 10 coach pretty much nationwide. A lot of our guys in the preseason had him as one of the SEC's top coaches alongside, Kirby and DeBoer and Steve Sarkisian. The big thing for LSU, too, Ole Miss had 10 penalties in the first half, and LSU trailed by double digits at halftime. That can't happen. There were no changes in the second half offensively for the Tigers. Brian Kelly did not make adjustments. Joe Sloan, the OC, and Blake Baker, DC. Everybody deserves blame, but the buck stops with Brian Kelly. He said at SEC Media Days in July, essentially guaranteeing a playoff spot because they had this just nuclear roster coming back through the transfer portal, bunch of guys added, and it just hasn't happened yet.
Brian Kelly himself investing millions into this roster as well. And so they put all their chips in the middle of the table. We'll see what happens for the rest of the season. Still a lot of football.